Yeah.
All right, so I think we can get started. We're going to start with our public hearing on our code of conduct.
Hi, good evening. We're here to do an overview of our code of conduct revisions that have been in the works for about a year now. So we will go through the purpose of the public hearing, what the revisions will entail, how we got here, and what the committee and then ultimately the code of conduct committee, then the policy committee are recommending to the Board of Education to adopt moving forward as our code of conduct. So as we go through our code of conduct, it is a policy that we review annually. If there are no changes made to the code of conduct, it rolls over and no action is taken. We're moving into our third year with our current code of conduct. And I'm sorry, we're moving into our fourth year. After 2 years, last year, we brought together a committee to review the code of conduct, see how it was working in practice, what was going well, what was difficult, and how it was really being received on the user end. How is it for families? How is it for kids? How is it for teachers? And was it doing what we intended it to do? So over the course of last year, we brought together a committee of stakeholders, had parents, teachers. We worked with our current 8th grade, our 7th graders at the time, to talk a little bit about how the code of conduct was working, areas of improvement, things that were working well. Tonight, we'll provide the public with a clear overview of what we are hoping to accomplish through some of the changes that we are making. I will say that the changes are not substantial in nature. They are not content related. It's more about organization, layout, and accessibility. We'll elicit feedback from the people that are here tonight, and the board will take that into consideration as they move through the first 2 readings of the updated policy. And then ultimately, as we work through the process, the board will adopt the code of conduct either as it was, as we're proposing, or somewhere in the middle. The purpose of our code of conduct is really to define the roles and responsibilities of all our stakeholders, teachers, administration, staff, visitors, families, students. It outlines behavioral expectations during the school day, school events, and when on school property. It establishes progressive consequences for misconduct. So the idea is that over time, repeated infractions, the consequences increase, but it also incorporates restorative practices to repair harm and build relationships. And then the last piece is that it really does protect students' rights and due process. So in the code of conduct, you will find due process pieces for families. Should they be facing suspension, other types of consequences, what rights do the students have, and what are some of the due process pieces that families can look to work through when behavior and misconduct is in question. So we brought together a committee last year, and the feedback from the committee was overall pretty positive. The restorative approach aligns with our district vision and policy. It is working as we hoped it would, and their recommendation was to keep this in the policy and to continue to move forward in that area. It was important that they understand that the board and the administration understand that we clarify that restorative practices are encouraged but not mandatory. We cannot require children and families to engage in restorative practices. We can educate, we can promote, we can help work through that process, but we cannot require it. And a big piece of that is in protection of victims. If you force somebody into restorative work that doesn't want to, the person who usually winds up getting harmed on the back end are the people that were originally harmed to begin with. As we were saying, the participation can't be forced, and in those cases, that traditional consequences still apply when needed. And sometimes they apply in conjunction with restorative practices. Sometimes restorative practices stand alone, and sometimes it's just consequences for a variety of reasons, sometimes being a lack of participation on the part of the family or the student. Our big takeaway in our conversations was the current code of conduct is not parent friendly, very text heavy, very long. When a parent needs something and they want to get their hands on it, it's not easily found within the code of conduct. There's 3 parts in particular. There are the misconduct, reporting, and then the consequences section. They were very wordy, very lengthy, and just not easy to navigate for a parent or even a student to understand kind of the connection between misconduct and then potential consequences or restorative practices. It was difficult to read and navigate, and that we were saying, the connection was unclear. We had a list of potential consequences and then a list of potential behaviors, and it wasn't super clear, like, what would result in potential detention, what could result in a conference with families, what could result in suspension. So we worked together as a group to clean some of that up and draw maybe some more clear lines in between. And it just provides us with clearer guidance. So there's two sections of the code of conduct that the committee and then ultimately the policy committee is bringing before the board tonight to consider. The first one is section 5300.30. In this section, it was the types of misconduct, a lot of description, and then consequences were weaved kind of throughout that area. So what the committee recommended is that in this area, we define the categories of student misconduct, and they are listed there for you. They range anything from disorderly conduct, insubordinate, disruptive, bus issues, academic, all the way up to violent conduct. So it still has those pieces listed out. It just doesn't have all the text that goes around that. That information is in the following section and is in a chart form. So ultimately, these section lists are now without behavior description or consequences intermingled. It just simply starts with these are the potential areas of misconduct, and then that the consequence and the description follows below. And that brings us to 5300.40. So in this section, and I can show you a sample in our policy that we have, what we are recommending is that we level areas of misconduct. Disorderly conduct is a 1, violent conduct would be a 5. So you start with some leveling to help families understand that as you go through, the severity of the misconduct increases. And then we connected each level to categories from 5300.30. So the categories that you saw in point 30 are the exact same ones in the exact same order in the chart that we'll show you. There are clear descriptions of the misconduct and clear examples of what it means to engage in that kind of behavior. There's clarifying language and other behaviors that align with this category so that it's not all inclusive, but that is in there as well. A good piece will be academic dishonesty. When you think about, we really didn't talk about AI in the area of academic dishonesty until recently. So it's vague enough that as things change, we don't have to come back and change the code of conduct, but specific enough that people can really understand, students and families, where different behaviors land. And then there's a list of possible responses and consequences. They are both restorative and progressive in nature. So before we go to that, can you pull up, there was a secondary piece, the edits that we provided, and there's a chart, and I'll just show quickly what that looks like. We're not going to go through the chart in its entirety. What I will say is that everything that was in the text, all of the examples, all of the definitions, they did transition into the chart that we had. And that is found under the public hearing. There were 2 documents attached to the code of conduct. Do you mind? If it's right there. If it's not, that's okay.
It's page 21 in the updated.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Which one?
Yep, the bottom of 21.
So essentially what we did is we took a lot of the text and we put it into a chart format so that it was easier to access. So for example, you have disorderly conduct. These are minor behaviors that cause small disruptions, often handled by teachers, running in the hallways, unreasonable noise, profane or vulgar abusive language. The pieces here is that if a student uses a curse word, if they drop something per se, versus directing a curse word at somebody, right? Computer and electronic communications misuse. You're on games that you shouldn't be on, maybe during the school day. And then there are some possible consequences, oral warnings, written warnings, a restorative conversation, depending on maybe a written or a verbal apology. And then as they increase, so you have a couple of disorderly conducts in that area, you're in class and maybe you are disrupting the class, making a lot of noise, and misusing your computer, that might result in detention, right? Along with some other things. So the possible consequences are here for you, and they range anything from a change in your seat to a detention to a knock you off. So there's a variety, and it goes through, and then it goes and it lists through. Insubordination is still listed as a 1 if you ignore a teacher's directive. again, repeated insubordination will start to rise up. Disruptive is when we start to get into a place where it's impacting the instruction of the class as a whole. We have our school bus, academic, off campus, and then our 2 level 5s are endangering the safety and welfare, and then the violent student behavior. And those are ones where we really start to look at suspension. So it's clearly laid out for families, what it means, where it falls, potential consequences, and it does make it a little bit easier from an administrative standpoint to have a conversation with a family. When they're trying to understand what happened, where does this fall, the seriousness. This kind of setup is much easier to navigate with a family versus the very text-heavy, simple code of conduct. Thank you, Trish. I appreciate it. So our next steps, we'll have our public hearing tonight. It'll be followed by public comment. The board will hear the comments and consider them as they prepare to take action. They will conduct a first and a second reading with feedback regarding the policy. And ultimately, after the readings, the board makes the decision to adopt the updated code of conduct. And then once that is in a really good place, the secondary piece to this that we had committed to as a group was then to create a parent and student handbook. So that again, it has the highlights, I would say, from the code of conduct, the things that they need to know every single day. And then it also has other things like our arrival, dismissal, courses, things, general information of how to navigate a school, but it's really hard to put that together until we have a board adopted, updated code of conduct. So questions or comments regarding the updates? Anything from the board? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll get started on our regular meeting. Could I get a motion to enter public session?
I'll make a motion to enter public session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're in public session. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Jessica,
Here.
Mr. Booth,
Here.
Mr. Hoffman,
Here.
and Mr. Ronald in his virtual tonight.
Comments from the public on agenda items. Oh, sorry, I skipped the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance, please. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now comments from the public on agenda items. Just a reminder for those members of the public in attendance, this is one of 2 opportunities afforded to members of the public to comment on or inquire about agenda items. Members of the public will also have an opportunity at the end of the evening's agenda to comment on matters not formally noted on the agenda. Public comments can be submitted via live stream or emailed to boecomments@menans.org. Does anyone in person have anything for the board? Anyone online? And we haven't been emailed anything. Okay, so we're going to move on to approval of the minutes. I think probably for ease, it might be easier if just the people in person do the resolutions and not have Alongovan read them. Are you guys okay just switching back and forth, or do you want me to get in there too?
I'm fine.
Switch back and forth, okay. All right, item F, approval of the minutes. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Menands Union Free School District accept the minutes of the September 8th, 2025 meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
I abstained from that. I wasn't there. I mean, I reviewed
Oh,
it. Should
yeah.
I?
That's fine. How many do we need to pass a motion? Do we need all 3 of us?
2, 3.
1, 2, 3 is 3. That's fine. So, yep, that's fine. You can abstain.
All right, I abstain then.
If it does happen that we don't, we could either table something for next meeting, if it comes up again later in the meeting, we could always table something or
I'll
if
think
it
you will.
votes down, but.
Okay.
Okay, item G, communication to the board. BOCES letters, I think this was just letting us know that they have the BOCES annual report for us. That's the pack that everyone got. Alongo, if you want one of these, you can pick it up when you get back, I assume. Three discussion items. A, superintendent's reports and update, strategic plan update on grading.
So a significant piece of the DEI goal that our school has been working on is grading practices and policies, particularly grading for opportunity. Mrs. Wiley, Mrs. Vandenberg, and Mrs. Perfetti are here to join us. They were 3 of the members that went through the first cohort of training. And they have really championed the work as they came back, and they had worked with teachers and led small groups and helped to bring back what they were learning so that the middle school could ultimately make some recommendations and do some trial-based work in the area of grading to make our practices more consistent, bias-resistant, and really represent what kids can know, what students know and what they can do versus some of the ambiguity that can occur in grading systems. It is one of the most important things that we do as educators, and it is one of the least trained areas that teachers have. So I will hand it over to Mrs. Wiley, who will report out. Mrs. Vandenberg will speak a little bit from the perspective of a school counselor, and then Mrs. Perfetti is here to speak a little bit about how that has played out within classrooms.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you for that intro. So as Jen said, our strategic plan, our grading piece lands right there where that giant arrow is. And our goal was in our strategic plan was to have people read the book study, Grading for Equity. As we kind of have progressed the last couple of years, we steered away from book studies sometimes. And we found a couple of different avenues worked a little more effectively for our staff. First of all, the BOCES Grading for Opportunity workshop is a 5-session long workshop that's pretty intense and is very helpful for teachers to really be able to put this into practice. So that was our first step. Our second step when we came back was, so we went to that all last year. There was 5 of us as well. Tom went, Mr. Schweitzer, and Michelle Irvin, yes, and then the 3 of us. So we went, and then when we came back in the spring, we planned to begin to kind of piecemeal this out and teach out a little bit and teach the staff what our big understandings are and then see how it works for Manans. So we spent some time doing that. We did take the Grading for Equity book and chop it up into some chapter studies. So there are big pieces of it that are done. We did those in some breakout studies. I think we did a total of like 5 or 6 faculty meetings just dedicated to this work. So it was good work, it was hard work. And then we got to a place by the end of the year where we wanted to try something. So that's what we're going to present to you today is our understandings and what we decided to try. Our policy states that our district shall use an established consistent grading system and classroom teachers should evaluate and assign grades according to established system. There's more to the policy than that, but that was a piece that kind of we zoomed in on because what we were noticing is that there wasn't as much consistency across the board. Teachers always have had a lot of independence for grading, as they should to a certain extent. However, families and kids also have to have some level of consistency of what a grade is and how they're going to be graded in the classrooms. So we honed in on this as well as our learning from our Grading for Opportunity course. And I'm going to use Grading for Opportunity, Grading for Equity interchangeably. BOCES calls it Grading for Opportunity. The book is called Grading for Equity. So if I use those interchangeably, they are the same thing. So in 24-25, we went to the course in BOCES, and then we came and did our article studies. 25-26, we have a second cohort that is going to the BOCES round 1. So what we went to last year, we have 5 more people going. Jen's going, Ms. Solomon's going, Ms. McQuaid, Ms. Seymour, and Ms. Burns. So we have 5 more that will go through the course that we went through. And we are going through a course number 2. So like an advanced version where they're really going to help us figure out what this looks like for our district and problem solve with us. One of the great things about this is that a lot of districts all over the capital region are going to it, and we are able to sit with other people who are at different points. Some further away than us, some a lot further along than us, some right where we are, and learning from them has been really helpful because you got to see what other people are doing and learn from them. So we were running to tables and pulling people over and like, what does this look like? And how do you do this? And so that was really helpful. So one of the big questions that BOCES training started with was, what is a grade? And we started with that here with our staff. What is a grade? What does actually it mean? What is it supposed to tell us? So first of all, who is it for? It's for students, families, and educators, right? So a grade is something that communicates something to a family, to a student, and to teachers and educators, and colleges eventually, and high schools, right? So that's that communication piece. And then we had to decide, but what is it communicating? So when you get, let's say, a 83, what does that communicate? What we wanted to communicate, where we landed, was we wanted to communicate the extent to which a student knows, understands, and can execute the skills of a state standard. So once we wrapped our brain around that, that's a shift in and of itself, because if we want that 67 or 83 to mean your student knows 83% of the content, we've got to work to get there, because sometimes grades can include a lot of other things. Back in the day, you brought in the tissue box, you got 5 points. That does not tell us anything about what a student can know or do, right? So we had to begin to rethink what we do in our classrooms and how we assess in order to make our definition really matter. So that's where we started, which is really hard work just getting there. So we then move forward, and the 3 big takeaways from our SPOSI session was these 3 things. Grades need to be accurate, grades need to be bias resistant, and grades need to be motivational. So I'm going to dig into each one of those. Let's go to the next slide. I think there's a little bit better. Okay, so grades should be accurate. So we want grades to reflect academic mastery, not non-academic factors like effort and behavior. For example, a student's grade shouldn't lose points because they didn't have a pencil to bring to school that day. Right? That's not telling us. We go back to our definition. Our definition is what they know and can do with regards to a standard. So we want to begin to remove some of those behavioral things out of that number. Otherwise, that number gets very skewed, right? Then we have kids who come into school that have a lot of resources and have a lot of support. They automatically are getting grades that are a higher level than students that do not have that. Right? Because we're measuring that, we're grading it. We're grading, did you bring the pencil? We're grading, did you sit quietly? We're grading, did you behave today? We're grading, did you help a nice friend and were you quiet and did you raise your hand? Did you, right? So we can get into grading a lot of things, but when we get back to our definition, we're moving away from that. So what we want to do is make sure a grade is accurate to that definition. Evidence of learning rather than averaging scores. So this is something we're still going to work towards. But the ideal is that if we want to teach students that learning matters, when we average scores together, we teach them that their learning and growth over time doesn't matter because we're going to average their worst with their best, right? So I think about it like sports, right? So I'm a basketball person, I'm going to practice. I'm going to dribble off my foot in practice. I'm going to dribble off my foot in practice. But when I get to the game, I hope I don't dribble off my foot. Right now, it matters. I'm going to dribble. I'm going to put the ball in the hoop. That's what matters, right? Not the practice, because the practice, as long as I'm working at it, I'm going to get better. But what if when we started the game, we said, well, you have 3 really bad practices, so you have -8 points when we start the game. We don't do that, right? We allow the learning to happen over time, and we value and really embrace that learning. When you average, you don't really embrace learning. You're embracing the average of their learning and how fast it took them to learn, right? A kid who learned it really fast, good for you. You have 100. Kid who took a long time and got to 100, still have 100, right? So they should, be able to attain that higher mark. Avoid zeros and extra credit for non-academic tasks like bringing tissues, etc. Okay, and our second thing is bias resistant. We want to try to avoid grading subjective factors. So as many subjective things as we can, taking those out. I think about, if a student goes home and has homework, right? Homework is great, not saying there's not a place for homework, but we have students who can go home and their parents are going to sit with them and they're going to put a table, in the kitchen, and you're going to sit there and your parents can help you and push you through. And then we have students who aren't going to have that, right? So now we're measuring their resources, right? We're not measuring what they know and can do, we're measuring what the resources are, and then that's added to a grade, right? So we want to try to remove some of those factors that are systematic and subjective. We're focusing on clear standards. So now we're really beginning to look, am I measuring and assessing what I actually plan to teach? I taught this, I assessed this. Not I taught this, and then we did a group project which actually assessed your ability to get along. right? Those are two very different assessments. I want to be able to assess what I taught. I'm not saying the projects are not good, they are, but we got to remember what we're assessing, right? We're assessing what a student knows, then it needs to be reflected in that assessment. Replace penalty for late work with opportunities to learn, time management and accountability. Not saying soft skills are not important. They belong somewhere and we really want to work towards them being somewhere on a report card, but maybe they don't belong tied into that grade. Because as a parent, when you get an 83, you don't know if they lost the 17 points because of their skills and knowledge, or because they didn't turn in their work on time, or because they didn't raise their hand enough. You don't know. You just see 83. It would be a lot better for you to see 83 and understand that is the extent to their mastery. And here's a grade for their preparedness. They didn't bring stuff every day. They didn't turn their homework in, right? So that is a way for parents to really connect with their kids about where they need to grow. And allow reassessments. If we're talking about learning over time, we need to allow students to learn at a pace that's not our pace all the time. The test is tomorrow. If you don't know by tomorrow, oh well for you. We're moving on, right? We need to replace that thinking with, nope, you can redo. We can try again. We're going to meet. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to reteach. This is different than corrections, right? Corrections, they go home with the parent and the parent and the kids sit down and do the corrections. Again, that's a subjective factor. That's a resource that not everyone has. Talking about redos and retakes where students can sit with a teacher and retake a test. And then the last one is motivational. So grades should encourage persistence. And if you're talking about learning over time, you have the ability to grow, and that's valued. It's not going to be, well, you took a little longer, so you get half credit. You know, oops, sorry about that. Like you retook the test, you got 100 on it, but you only get really a 70 because that's the average of the two. No, learning happens over time, and that's okay. And we want to encourage that. So students become motivated by the fact that, okay, I didn't get it right now. I didn't get it yet, but the learning isn't over just because this test is over. Separate academic achievement and behavior. We talked a little bit about that. We're working towards transparent rubrics where students can have a rubric in front of them so that they really know what they need to do to succeed. Ms. Perfetti will talk a little bit about a rubric that she's using and is having some success with, but our goal is to have a standard-based rubric where students can know what it means to be successful in a given area, on a given test, on a given essay, and then use formative assessments to guide the way. So students will get a lot of time. Formative assessment is just like a small informal assessment that will tell the teacher how the student is doing on a given task. And then they get that feedback and that allows them to grow before we get to the high stakes testing. And I'm going to hand it over to Counselor Ms. Vandenberg to talk a little bit about grades from her perspective.
Such a great reading. I'm like, I think you said it all. I have notes, I can't do it like you. So just that top statement, I think says it all from school counseling perspective, just that if all of our students graduate from demand, knowing that they're capable of growth and that their effort matters, that goes a long way. That's something they can carry with them no matter where they are in high school, college, career, whatever their path takes them onto. So, you know, really looking at what our equitable grading is able to shape and also support, those two different categories. So being able to shape that student confidence and motivation, being able to see themselves capable of growth and taking ownership in their learning is so important as they set their goals for their own improvement. And they can work with that rubric that Ms. Wiley mentioned to do that. Also, having access to support when there's equitable grading, it allows that assistance can be tailored to each individual student. We're able to look more readily at what each student needs, whether it's a retake or a redo or sitting down and looking at some of the particular components of a unit. Additionally, also that sense of self in the school community. Through equitable grading, students start to realize who they are, see themselves as a learner, and then every student has a place within our school learning community. We do have students who see themselves as learners, and then we have students who see themselves as not learners. And to have that dichotomy split so early on, it's hard to build out of that. So being able to build that sense that all of us are learners and all of us are moving along on that trajectory. Additionally, it supports mental health. The stress that students go through over grades. Even to the point of a 98 or a 99. It's weighs very heavily on all of our students' minds. And it really starts to shape again the idea of who they are and their ability to take risks. And I'll go through that in a minute. It also increases engagement because as students see that they can take that safe risk and try something and push themselves, then all of a sudden you have classrooms where it's not just like, well, I'm going to wait because Miss Petty always raises her hand and I know she's going to save me. You know, I actually can put myself out there in a conversation or try to be somebody who maybe I didn't know that I was. Maybe I am a public speaker and I didn't know it. Or I'm going to study in a different way. Additionally, an important part is that it opens doors for success in high school. So as you know, we have four high schools that we send to, and each one operates in a very different way. And for our students, once we start working with this equitable grading rubric and thought process, it really not only gets our students to see themselves differently, but also the high schools. And I just wanted to just touch on that just for a moment. So because they have some greater content mastery, students get a clearer signal of what they understand and what they still need. Some of our students will sit there and say, I don't know what I need. I have no idea what I need to study more, what it means to be more attentive, what does it mean to take a risk and raise my hand even. So through this, they get more feedback on what they actually need to do to move along that trajectory. And also, then we can help in high school and as counselors here, we can help talk to them about what level of rigor they are really ready for. An 83, right? What does that tell us, right? Well, we can really point to other classes they've taken and times when they've been able to show that success. Traditional grading also, it can be misleading and it makes students ineligible for advanced courses. When they get a point system, there's a definite cutoff. So a lot of our high schools have like a 92 or a 93, right? And say that means you can't go to advanced courses, whereas an A or a B gives a different kind of message there. And to be cut out of some of those courses, it just means that they're kind of like stuck in their past mistakes. They never get a chance to move out of that and again, try something new. Students deserve the opportunity to take those safe risks. Where else to take them but here, right? Where we don't, it's not high stakes. They take a class that they try. We have had students who have taken our advanced courses, we were talking about it today, who maybe didn't do very well on paper. And yet the things that they learned about themselves as a learner, as a student, how to push through, and how to tap into any internal or external motivation has been a lesson that you can't quantify. So they take that with them as well. When middle school when we emphasize mastery solely, students can practice skills like study habits, self-assessment, taking responsibility, and that also gets them ready for the rigor of high school. And then finally, students who would otherwise feel devalued by maybe harsh penalties or kind of like a one and done kind of a system, they start to lose their resilience. And, you know, we talk about those soft skills. What better skill to be able to say they leave the main school with than resilience, motivation, the ability to assess a safe risk, the ability to ask for help and assess where they are.
So this was just a quote from our learning at our BOCES training. When classroom culture focuses on rewards, gold stars, grades, or placed in class ranking, then pupils look for ways to obtain the best marks rather than at the needs of their learning, which these marks ought to reflect. I'm just going to pause here because what we often see is point gathering, right? Like students gathering points rather than gathering learning. And our goal is for them to replace points with learning. We want you to focus on the learning over time and the growth, not how many points can I get from this. So I'll hear students like, how do I get a higher grade on this? We want to hear, how can I learn more about this topic? And we're hoping Grading for Equity will push us in that direction. One reported consequence is that when they have any choice, pupils avoid difficult tasks. They also spend time and energy looking for clues to the right answer. Many are reluctant to ask questions out of fear or failure. So because of points driving who they believe they are, they're avoiding hard tasks because they just want to get to the points. So we're really looking to change that system where they're thinking about how can I succeed even if it takes me a little more time. So our first steps that we tried this year, we moved grades 5 through 8 to an A through F scale. The reason why we did that is that when you have a 0 to 100 scale, students have 65 ways to fail, and they only have 10 ways to get an A, and they only have 10 ways to get a B, and so on. So you have a lot of ways to get an F, to fail, right? You get a 3 on a test, you are never recovering from that. Not for a whole quarter, you're done. You get an F is an F and F, right? So an F is sending the same message, right? You did not master the content, you did not master the standard. It's the same as getting a 3, but if you get a 3 on a test, that feels pretty demoralizing and you cannot recover mathematically, right? So we changed to an A through an F scale. All middle school classes have common categories of practice and assessment. What we're asking teachers to do is think about, am I giving them something that is an assessment? An assessment is defined as something that is an assessment of their skills or knowledge on a content standard. So I taught this skill and now I'm assessing it. A practice is anything that builds up to that. So that's how we're delineating. Students are sitting in a group doing a worksheet together, that's practice. Students now do a written essay based on all those practices, that's an assessment. So they're separating into 2 categories. And then redos and retakes are encouraged for assessments, so that students who struggle on an assessment can set up a time to redo or retake with their teacher. And Ms. Perfetti.
Students' initial thoughts on the scale. Honestly, I think that when we first started talking about this, we were like, what are they going to say? Are they going to be mad? Are they going to be like, I want a 98, I want a 99, I don't like this. But I have noticed, and you know, this incoming 6th is different because like they didn't have too many years of numbers. Last year was the first time they saw that in 5th grade. But the 7th graders, almost like there was a sigh of relief from some of them. Like, oh my God, I don't have to get like a 99 on this. Like I can think of several students who have felt like so much more comfortable that that's just a range. Like I can make a mistake, but I can still get an A. I can make 2 mistakes and maybe I can still get an A. Like they can see the value in being okay with making a mistake and realizing it's not going to make them plummet or feel like they're plummeting inside when they get this test back or an assessment back from whoever it is that's giving the test or the quiz. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. I did ask Ms. McQuaid, like her thoughts from the 5th grade's perspective, and they have no issue with it because coming from K4, they have numbers. So they see the numbers. And I actually learned a lot from the younger K4 people because when you see a report card, my own kids, like it's a number. And then the behavior is separated. And then, like you're saying, your preparedness is separated. It gives the parent more of a insight onto the kid and like what they're doing and how they're performing and the more specific stuff that you need to know to help your kid and for your child to also improve. So I like that. And I think that moving forward, that's just something that we have to kind of work to get to. This is step 1. There's many steps that we're going to have to get through on that. But overall, I think the students have felt pretty good and confident about the shift. My hopes for the students, and I can speak only from my perspective, but I can say the kids in my class are pretty involved and active anyway, but I've noticed a shift in several behaviors in terms of like, lots of the time, people just want to write the answer down. I've done it, here's my work, here's my answer, the answer is 10. Well, where is your work? I don't need to do it. Well, no, you do have to do it because, can you go to the next slide? This is what I'm looking at. Right, so when you're doing a practice in class, this is how the students are scored. So I just did that on a 1 to 5 scale, but it's A, B, C, D, at, basically. So let's say we're doing a classwork assignment. Well, this is your classwork and this is how I'm scoring you, right? Are your answers correct? Yes. And did you show nothing? Well, that's not an A, right? Because you need to show supporting work and evidence so that we can make sure that your answer matches the supporting evidence. And then both of those things together get you to that score of an A. So I've seen many kids go back and say, oh, they almost like self-correct now, where as opposed to sometimes where they would just be quick to answer the question. Now they're quick to notice, I need to show supporting work. You know, modeling that work for them and reminding them of those things is very, very important to still do. But just having something in the back of their mind also is helping them kind of show that supporting evidence, which is good too, because then if they do make a mistake, they can self-correct and then move forward, you know, to achieve that A or B or whatever it is we're looking for. Oh, back up, sorry. Creating students' awareness and expectations for their own success. So like that rubric definitely lends itself. Other teachers have also used rubrics. I know Mr. Schweitzer uses rubrics, Mr. Herman, in ELA they use rubrics. So having something for them to look at and understand this is where I need to land is very helpful. Giving them a task and being specific about what the task needs to look like makes them more aware and they know what they need to do to achieve those specific things. I talked about the noticing with the students. I will say it's not been easy. It's been hard. Like Mrs. Wiley said, this has been difficult work. You know, we went through this and saw this and we're able to talk to a lot of different districts who have already done this. So when we came back and talked to colleagues about it, it was definitely, you know, a push-pull. Like they were willing to give here, but grades feel like really personal to people. Like it's the thing that you do and you've done it and it's hard to change. And that's been difficult, but people are willing to change and want to change. It's just the shift, I would say that's really hard is understanding the difference of practice versus assessment. Like how do you score a practice? Because not every practice is an A. Just because you do it doesn't make it an A, right? So you have to make sure that you understand from your own perspective, like how to be mindful of this is what I need to base my score off of. This is my rubric. This is where these kids fell. And then making sure you have enough of them. That's also hard, right? Making sure you're assessing more frequently. So the concept of a test or a quiz gets like kind of ingrained in people's minds. Like that's the only way you assess. Well, no, you got to find different ones. Like maybe there's a 2-question exit ticket that the kids do, or you pull a small group and you do 5 quick multiplication questions, or you have them read a short passage and then give them a synopsis. Like you have to be willing to see the differences in assessments, which has been very different and challenging too. But I think as we go, this is kind of like we learn as we go and then we'll grow and just we'll see where it goes. But so far, I think it's been good. And we're just, so,
I keep using the phrase, we're like building the airplane as we're flying it, you know, because when you're doing this work, you've got to start doing it to figure out. Like you got to put some, you know, boundaries in place, but you also have got to do it to see how grades play out and see how assessments play out and see what teachers need more support on. Because until you do it, you don't know. Like you've talked a lot, Megan, I've talked a lot about assessment versus practice and what is what and how do we figure that out. I get that from teachers a lot, and that's just something we're just gonna have to develop some PD around and work through. But we wouldn't have known it if we didn't start. We just had to start. So next points of consideration. So, you know, the ideal gold star is to create standards-based assessments where students are purely based, they're assessed purely on a standard, and a parent would eventually get a report card or something that says standard 1.2 in ELA 4th grade B, and you would know how they do on the standard. We are a ways off from that, but that's kind of like where maybe the gold star eventually is. We would like to begin to inch towards standards-based assessments where we're using those rubrics, standards are listed, and students know what it means to get an A on that standard by seeing the rubric and having access to that rubric. And obviously the use of rubrics, you know, we want to eventually rethink averaging. Right now we are doing the A through F scale, which eliminates some level of averaging. There will be some averaging at the end of the quarter still. The A through F is going to be averaged, and that's how a quarter grade will be spit out. So we do have some level of averaging, we'll continue to reevaluate that. And then we would really like to have a soft skills rubric and assessment so that parents know where their students are at. Like we talked about with the elementary report card, there is some assessment in report cards of those soft skills. We don't currently have that in a 5 through 8 report card. That might be something at some point, whether it's just a rubric or it's, feedback for students over time. I think they need to know where they're at with the soft skills that make them successful in standards. I think that is it. Any questions? A lot.
I have a few. Does anyone else want to go first? Okay. Some explanation went into this parent teacher night, right? So as parents, we were kind of introduced to this. And I definitely had some questions. This presentation was very helpful. Some that I still have, and I'm sure either it's probably stuff you're still working through, is I worry about kids that maybe don't test well. This idea of what is an assessment and how do you assess what kids know, and not punishing kids that could maybe make up for a grade with effort because they did poorly on tests, but they still did okay, and making sure that we aren't punishing those kids because they don't test well. And are we going to be able to do assessments that aren't just testing? Maybe they have different ways of communicating the knowledge that they've earned, like it's explaining it versus taking a written test. And ELA maybe, a performance instead of like writing an essay. You don't want to punish them because they know the information, but they can't write well, things like that. So I worry not worry, but it's something maybe to consider as we move through this. And again, I'm sure you're having these conversations. Some of those soft skills might have buoyed some of these kids, and now we're taking that away, and all that's left is what do you know and what don't you know, which is going to be tough for kids and parents, I think, as we make that transition. The other thing that I had was about kids always being able to make up work, which I think is a fantastic idea. If they perform poorly on an assessment, can they make it up? Hopefully that's something that the teachers are allowing the kids to do. I would worry about teachers having enough time. If the one good thing about letting them take it home and do corrections, you're not able to verify they're really doing the work. Are the parents helping them? But if they have to do it in school with a teacher, that's a big burden on the teacher's time. So how are we giving them infinite opportunities to make up the work and still allowing them to move on to the next thing, and allowing the teachers to be able to move on with the rest of the class in the next
Can I
thing?
address that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we will still work through that. That still is, timing is hard. And I would caution the word infinite. We're not there yet. Like, I would love to say we're there, but I don't know that we're in infinite yet. I think right now what we're working on is a quarterly basis, or am I right around that? Like, in a quarter is what we're kind of working with. So a student has the quarter, and I know that's not where our ideal state is, right? Our ideal state is like the assessment isn't over until the end of the year, because that's when we want our students to learn. But it would be very challenging for teachers to have to go back and give September assessments in June.
Right.
That would be very hard. So right now we're working on a quarter by quarter basis. We worked on our schedule to free up teachers as much as we could during study hall and flex time so that they could be available on different days. Doesn't always work out. So we're still working through, Mr. Petty and I just talked about that today, just working through how do we give a student a spot to make up. Maybe she's not available to give the test. Can they do it with another study hall teacher? Can they do it in my office? Can they, where can they do it? And I think to your point, the other thing, differentiating assessments is an important piece to this as we grow, right? Like, not every student is going to do a pen and paper test. Well, maybe they sit with the teacher and the teacher realizes through conversation, you actually know all this. That can be the assessment.
Right.
Like, the assessment is just how you know, understand, and can do these skills. I do believe the grade should still reflect that, but it might need to reflect that in a different way. So, Ms. Solomon might have students that speak Spanish really fluently in class, some who don't want to speak up, but they go to her after class and they're having conversations. That's okay. That's an assessment. That's still okay. So I think us working also through how we're going to work with teachers on PD around differentiating assessments will be one of our steps that we've talked about.
Right. Yep. And the averaging thing makes sense, although some averaging still will make sense because you're still going to have different assessments on different skills, right? So like averaging, maybe they were great at this skill, but not that skill. So you know, you don't necessarily have to average all the practice that led up to that skill, but you're still gonna have some
Yeah.
averaging for the different
Okay.
skills. So that makes
Yeah.
sense. I think that was all that I had. Thank you. I appreciate that. Did anybody else have any questions or comments? I know you're not quite there yet in the middle school, so maybe this is,
I'm getting close to it. I'm a fifth grader. My only question, and I'm trying to phrase this the best way I can. I'm a sports person too, right? So we talk about a game, and at the end of the game, it's you guys did really well. You executed this skill well. You executed that skill well. You communicated well with each other. At the end of the day, a lot of kids, even when we're not keeping score, they know, oh, we lost by 3 or we won by 8. When you talk about the grading as being A through F, is that, for an example, if we have a test of 100 questions, is it now just being you got an A because of the amount of questions you got wrong, but the kids still know, oh, if I got 8 out of 10 correct, that's an 80, which is a B, but there's still some type of number associated with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the kids are only seeing in when we use school tool, and I don't think that in fifth grade you have access to that yet.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but they only see a letter. So like on my end, if I'm calculating, they had 20 points on the test, whatever, they're not seeing a number anywhere at all. They just see the letter that's associated with it. That's it.
Good. Awesome.
But is there numbers in the background right now? There are right now.
Right. If the numbers are in the background, that's fine. I would just be concerned. I have a child who is, doesn't matter if I said, hey, buddy, that's great. You got a B. He'd be like, well, I got an 83 out of 100.
Yeah.
That's not
Mhm.
to his standard. That wouldn't be good
Mhm.
for him. But if, I would think if he doesn't see that,
Yeah.
that would be easier. Oh, I got a B. A B is a B. We don't need to worry about the number that
Yeah.
goes along with it.
And the B, coupling the B with the feedback of the specific skill and standard that might need to be improved, right? So
Yeah.
it's gotta be, it looks like just this part of the test you struggled on, you know, maybe this division piece right here. Let's meet, talk about division, redo that division piece, and we can change your grade. Like that, the whole test doesn't have to be reassessed, right? He just is struggling with division. He does that with the teacher, they practice it. All right, let's do a new assessment. Teacher gives him a 2-question division test. Might be totally different than the original assessment. 2-question division test. He gets 100 on it, you know, he passes both, it's an A.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
kind of what we're thinking in the long term.
Yeah, I think about it the other way too. If it's, and I guess I'll ask when you talk about, so he got a B, I'll just say, child got a B, here's what we could work on to get a higher.
Mhm.
Is it the opposite too, where it's, hey, listen, you might have gotten a B, but you did really well
Mhm.
in X, Y, Z to allow the child to say, okay, maybe I didn't get the A, but I know that I did really well on these areas. So this is something that I can still work hard on,
Yeah.
along with the, I hate to say negative, so I'll say the
Right.
areas of improvement. You could say, these are the areas I need to improve on, but this is what I did really well on, and get that, for lack of better words, like that
Yeah.
feedback sandwich to them.
And that's why our long-term goal would be to really give a lot of rubrics, because then students are actually seeing, like, oh, look at all these areas I'm doing really well on, because the rubric is telling me. It's not just a teacher providing a number and then my number is my worth, right? Or even the letter is my worth. It's, I have this rubric with these standards, and look at, I did great on adding and subtracting, and I showed my work, and I just, that one division one, I'm gonna work on that, and I did this, and I did, right? So that really is real feedback. Rather than just a number telling them, good try, buddy,
Right.
you know?
I will say the kids are always gonna do a little bit of that, the comparing and the, oh,
Yes.
I got a B and this kid got an A and I'm
Yeah.
done. This-"
Mhm.
But getting rid of the number gets rid of some of that. I had one of those high pressure kids where she got a 98 and not a 99, but somebody else in the class did, and they do that ranking. They talk about what grades they got, and oh, I'm not as smart as this kid. And I would say, yes, you are. And she said, well, I'm not, because their grade is 2 points higher than me and whatever.
That class would have had that would have been a different animal. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like,
yeah, for that group of
for that
kids.
group, it would have been a very hard adjustment,
Yeah,
but I think.
but it would have been
it
good
would
for
have been a
them,
Good adjustment for them.
right?
So we will come back and follow up when we push a little more. We'll see how it goes. The teachers are doing great with it, though. in a new place.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation, for the work. Again, it sounds like a lot and a big adjustment. I'm sure throughout the year it will be, but we appreciate it. And the value that we could see from it. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, time for bedtime.
Okay, anything else from superintendent or?
No.
Good,
I
okay.
want to leave that video.
All right, next item, business matters, non-action items. Actually, I'm sorry, Alongo, did you have anything to say or ask about grading before we move on? Kind of got you.
I've seen both sides, so.
Okay, thank you, Alongo. Sorry about that. Non-action item warrants enclosed for the information of the board are copies of the following warrants and claims auditor report for August 2025. A6, A5, A9, A11, and EC1. Were there any questions on that?
No.
No.
Okay, item B, business office non-action items appropriation status report. Were there any questions on the report?
Oh,
All right, item C, revenue status report. Any questions there?
No.
Okay, business matters, action items. A, contracts for approval. Could I get a resolution, please?
be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District hereby approves the following contracts for the 2025-2026 school year as listed A through D.
Second.
Are there any questions on any of these?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, audit approval. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved upon recommendation of the audit committee that the Board of Education accept the 24-25 external audit as completed by Weston Company.
Second motion.
Are there any questions on this or comments from the people that were at the audit committee meeting?
Audit looked great.
Yeah.
It was a very good audit. Congrats. Nice work.
Okay, no concerns from the committee about approving the report? Okay, great. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item C, treasurer's report. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District approve the revised treasurer's report for July 2025 and the treasurer's reports for August 2025 and September 2025.
Second.
Any questions about those? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, donations. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District accept the donations at A through E as listed.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to abstain because two of the donations are from the PTA and I'm on the board of the PTA. But the motion carries with 3 ayes. Thank you to those various groups.
Back to the EDA and other folks.
Item 6, policies. A, first reading of policies. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the Policy Committee, approve the first readings of the following policies.
Second.
Any questions about these? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, personnel agenda. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District approves the personnel agenda items as listed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Did you want to say?
I would just like to congratulate Ms. Stack. She worked this summer to get her supplementary TESOL certification, which involved an application to the state education department, taking some state testing, a recommendation on our part so that she could serve a group of our students with ENL needs here at Manans. So she will officially begin her tenure track position when her certification came through. So congratulations to her. It was a little bit of work and she worked hard to get it done and it's something to be proud of.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Stack, and congratulations. Personnel matters, item B, substitute teachers fully cleared. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District approve the substitute teachers for the 2025-2026 school year as listed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, superintendent program recommendations, CSE, CPSE recommendations. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District hereby approves the CSE, CPSE recommendations as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Takes us to student matters, enrollment update. Looks like we're at 310 for the year. Do we still have a waiting list for pre-K or we through the list?
Currently, nobody. And we're up to 312 as of today.
We're up what? Three more?
312.
Oh, 312. Item B, superintendent's comment.
Bless you.
So, on behalf of our school community, our students, our staff, our families, we wanted to recognize the Board of Education for Board Appreciation Week. NISBA celebrates the work and the efforts of Board of Education members during the course of this week. Our board meeting usually tends to fall during this time, and then we'll be off to NISBA next week. We have, well, Joanne, when I say we, Joanne has some treats for you from Bell. And then in addition, between, I think, mine and Miss Wiley's amateur video skills and the magic that Mrs. O'Connell does with those video skills, we have a video for you from our students to thank you around the work that you do.
That was wonderful.
Very nice.
So thank you for the work that you do. It's often the unseen work, but we appreciate you and we appreciate how you listen to all of our ideas and what we want to do, and then in the background help support to make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then the second piece I have for you is NISBA. 3 of us will be heading out for NISBA next week. It is around maintaining, keeping, and promoting dignity in our schools, keeping kids at the forefront of the work that we do in our schools, and really just a time to take a minute and refocus. There's going to be a lot of noise in the world, and sometimes we just need to take a minute, take a breath, and then focus on the why. Why are we here? What are we doing this for? And really what ultimately is going to rise to the top and be most important. So I look forward to the sessions and coming back and then sharing some of that with our board as we move forward in our school community. I think every year we usually walk away with 1 or 2 things that really are important, and we're able to come back and make them happen within our school community. So I look forward to that. So we'll be off, I believe, on Thursday, right?
Great, thank you. Student matters, business office comments. Joanne?
I'm very happy that I get to speak before Kathleen. She's a very hard act to follow. We have just a couple things coming up. Obviously, we're going to respond to our audit, our corrective action plan, which is over 4%. We'll be working on that. We will reconvene the audit committee because I want to say the bylaws, but that's not really correct. Of the audit committee state that they will review the corrective action plan with us. So we're going to do that. The reserve plan update will be in November, where we'll go over all the existing reserves, the activity they've had on them in the last year, and any anticipated activity moving forward. I don't really have an update on the HVAC unit that's going to, that we have the open public forum on with the funds, the extra, the other air conditioning unit. Although they did say that it won't be immediate, they do plan on it being before the end of before winter really is here. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. It doesn't really matter. We don't need air conditioning in the winter, but it certainly would be nice to get that on the roof and be done with that. My other comment has to do today with your appropriation status report that nobody commented on. I was a little disappointed. There are some negatives in that, and I wanted to let the board know why. There are some negatives on that because we are still in the beginning of the year. I just wrapped up the audit, or we just wrapped up the audit. And we tried very hard to do all of our encumbrances or open POs. We had new people in the office. So they replicated some of the POs we did last year. So I don't want to make a budget transfer just to not have a negative. Some of them are just because there are too many POs in the line. So I'm going to go through, clean all that up in the next week. So the next appropriation status report you see won't have any negatives. And now we'll be looking for those. So that'll be kind of fun for the board meetings. But I did want to tell everybody why they were there. I haven't had a chance to scrub them yet, the account codes. And I won't do a budget transfer unless it's absolutely necessary. I won't do one just to clean it up. That's it. Kathleen, you're up. See, I don't have anything. Thank you.
So I think when we last met, they had plenty of candidates book. I don't think I was able to show you any pictures. They have requested that this is their end of year field trip as well. They would like to do another 3-day sleepover. They had the best time. They had a blast. So, just thank you to all the staff and families and everybody who put something into this because the kids are so appreciative. They loved it. They had a great time. So. Here they are by the fire with their s'mores and marshmallows. They went on the lake. They did a lot of stuff in the boats, and then they also did their ropes and their swing, their what is that called? Their ropes course, yeah. So they just had a blast. They just are still. I know they're still talking about it. So that's how great of a time we had. Book fair, thank you for all the parents that helped out. A lot of parents came in and supported and helped out with the book fair. Always a good time for the kids and a crazy time in the building with the kids wanting you know, just the right book and just the book fair money and, you know, it's just very exciting, but it went well and the parents are always very helpful and thank you to Ms. Gibson who put that together. So Parents Night, there was a good turnout for Parents Night. We also spent some time getting rid of some of the, handing out some books that we have. Ms. O'Connell is going to get many more events handing out books. So if you know any places that want books, we have plenty of books to give away. But Parents Night was well attended and I think was a successful event. We have some just different tables that came to community tables. So we had our energy bus assembly, the first one. So we did some activities in the gym. It is just really special for all of our school to come together in the gym and have these assemblies. So we did it around energy bus. We kicked off our energy bus theme for our assembly. Did some bus driving. There's Ms. Perfetti driving her bus in a positive direction. And I may or may not have worn a bus costume that Kay purchased for me. It is Physical Therapy Awareness Month. So at PT, the students that are involved in PT have been dressing like PT superheroes. So they have been flying around the building. Thank you to Ms. Hep for all the work she does with them. There have been some PT superheroes out and about. Sixth grade went to Thatcher Park. We had talked last year, PTA had talked about how we could support community building in the sixth grade. We do the eighth grade one, which is great. And when our kids enter middle school, they also need to kind of come together as a community. So PTA supported us with this field trip. And we were able to send sixth graders to Thatcher Park. They did a work course there. They had a really great time and a beautiful day for it. Mr. Schweitzer headed that up, I believe. And they had a great day. Some great pictures of them up in the sky. Our October Energy Bus Assembly, what we did is celebrated some people who were our role models for the first energy bus rule, which was be the driver of your own bus. And we introduced our next rule, which is you have to have a vision in order to drive the bus in a direction that matters. So our rule number one was we're just gonna, you're the driver of your bus, you take care of your bus, but you gotta know where your bus is going. So now this month, we're really focusing on having an eye on the prize. Where is your bus going? Where are you heading it today? Where are you heading it in this conversation? Where are you heading it with this activity in class? So just thinking about our vision and what we see for ourselves in this day. So we had a good time with that. They, each class got together and wrote out what their vision was for their class and what they saw as their vision as a group. PTA pancake breakfast. I did not get to attend that, but do you have any details? I don't have much details.
Yeah, it went great. It was well attended. Good food. It was a good time.
Awesome. Always says, look at those cute faces. Little lips over there.
Oh, yeah, we were there.
Yeah. Our soccer team is killing it. If you don't know, they are, I believe, 3-0 now, winning big and playing really well. So if you get a chance to see them, I think they have a couple games left. But they are, when I'm reading the announcements, it's like reading the number of goals that we score is like a whole other section of time. It's 9-10 goals in a game. They're doing pretty well. We had our Sweethearts and Heroes Brave Visit, which is our anti-bullying group that came. They had an assembly last year. We got a grant from Albany County to support an anti-bullying program. So we're having these guys come back in, and what the Brave Visit is we have chosen 15 middle schoolers, 5th through 8th graders, who are learning how to do what we call anti-bully drills. They're teaching students in the younger grades how to recognize bullying situations and how to interrupt them. And then they're going into the younger grade classrooms, which you can see in some of these pictures. So these are our middle schoolers working with first graders, our middle schoolers working with first graders. And that's our middle schoolers just working together. So what they're doing is they're going in and they're doing scenarios. So they'll say, so there's a scenario and this person is being mean to this person. What's a strategy you can use to help the person being bullied? And then the first grader will practice the strategy with the older kids supporting them. So it was an amazing day. It was really great. They're coming 5 more times. So we're pushing into tomorrow, they come back and they'll be in second and third grade. Fourth and fifth grade will be doing circles with anti-bullying circles in the afternoon. So we have a full day planned and we'll come back several more times. It was really great. And this was just a picture of our grant presentation. If you haven't had the chance to see it on the news, and just thank Albany County and all that they have done for us and supported our programming. And here's a few things coming up. We have Superintendent's Day next week. We are having responsive classroom here to support our teachers around a workshop called Responding to Misbehavior. So we'll be doing that on the 20th. Red Ribbon Week information is coming out this week. We have the pumpkin run on the 31st, and there may be a special staff run somewhere in the middle of that day. So if you're there, keep your eye out. You won't be able to miss it, believe me. And the quarters around the corner, Fall Fest, and there we are with the book already. Any questions?
Thank you. It takes us to item 10, miscellaneous. This is a chance for board members to ask any questions about anything that wasn't covered on the agenda, talk about community items, bring up a topic for a future agenda. Does anybody have anything? I actually think I do not either. Longo? Good. Okay, public comment. Please note during public comment sessions, members of the community may address the board on agenda and non-agenda items. The board president may limit remarks to a reasonable time. We don't have that problem. Speakers must identify themselves and the topic on which they would like to make remarks. Does anybody have anything? Anybody online? Okay. I will say before we get a motion to adjourn, we will be entering into executive session this evening. We do not anticipate taking action at the end of the executive session. Anybody is welcome to stay, as we will only be reassembling to adjourn. Feel free to leave once we adjourn. Could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Could I get a motion to enter executive session?
I'll make a motion to enter executive session for the medical financial